Hello there, Mr. K here, and I'm the Mediocre Painter, and I'm doing YouTube videos to get you into the wargaming hobby because I've made the mistakes so you don't have to. So today, I'm going to talk about rolling dice. I know that sounds kind of silly, but let me explain. I've been watching a lot of wargaming videos online. I recently became a lifetime vault member of Mini Wargaming. I've been watching a lot of battle reports. And one thing that really struck me was, something not quite right with the dice rolling. I couldn't quite figure out what it was, and then it dawned on me. They're using full-size dice when they play. So, you know, traditional D6 is that kind of size. And so when they're got loads of them in their hands like this and they're shaking them, they can't really rotate the dice. So you're not allowing the Lord of Fate, Tzeentch, to allow the dice to actually roll. So instead, when they're actually, putting them on the table, they're literally dropping the dice, not actually rolling the dice. And I was like, I wonder if that actually affects the ability in terms of getting a decent result if you do that, because basically you're using bigger dice. Now, I always use the smaller dice. Now, Games Workshop started to ship these with the first Fantasy Battle box set, and I consider these to be lucky dice for whatever reason. And I've never actually bothered to do any sort of statistical analysis to prove whether they are lucky dice or not. Curiously, the larger dice that I have in my set, which people I've played with seem to prefer, often walk away and consider them to be sort of cursed in some way. And I was like, is that really the case? So I decided that I would roll 600 dice rolls for each one, and then basically have a look and see what the actual results were, but roll them in the same way. So basically, roll them like this, about 10 each, roll them like this, and then just basically drop them. Kind of like I was seeing it being done on the Mini Wargaming battle reports, and then basically have a look at the actual numbers and see what I actually got. Alright then, so here goes. So if I'm rolling a dice 600 times, then basically I should expect to get 100 ones, 100 twos, 100 threes, 100 fours, 100 fives, and 100 sixes. This is not the science of rockets if the dice is perfectly even. So if we look at a cumulative score, you get 100 for the ones, 200 for the twos, 300 for the threes, 400 for the fours, 500 for the fives, 600 for the sixes, to give you a total score of 2100. Divide that by 600 rolls, and basically that means your average dice roll is a 3.5, which is, what you would be expecting to achieve. Now, so what happens when I roll traditional size dice 600 times? And believe me, this was a very tedious exercise, but 600 is probably not an unreasonable amount. Might be sort of what you do in a typical game. Actually, you might actually roll more than that in a typical game. So basically I rolled 95 ones, 125 twos, 80 threes, 85 fours, 115 fives, and 100 sixes. And if we tot it all up, I basically scored a total of 2010 to an average score of 3.35. Now, as you can see, that is a lower score than what you would expect if it's perfectly even. But also, if you look at the distribution as well, we're significantly lower when we're talking about the middle of the park. And like I say, the attitude to people who have used these dice is that, they are cursed, quote unquote, in some way. And I actually happen to think, it's more down to perhaps the way you throw them than the actual dice, because the larger dice don't have the chance to rotate when you're rolling a lot of them in one go, and therefore Tzeentch can't work his magic for you. So let's have a look at what I would consider my lucky dice, which is the sort of smaller dice, like the ones you get with the First Strike box set, and the old fancy battle box set. So these are my lucky dice, and I've always thought of them as lucky, and whether that is actually true or not is another matter. So basically, in rolling these, I got 105 ones, I got 92s, 95 threes, 85 fours, 105 fives, and 120 sixes. And this is probably the reason why I think of these dice as lucky, is they seem to give me plenty of sixes. And that gives me a total score of 2155, 3.59, which is greater than what you would expecting as an average. But if you look at the distribution, the real killer for here is that basically these dice I think of as lucky, and it's definitely, now I've done it, I realise it's probably down to the fact of, wow, I get a lot of sixes with this, but then that's counteracted by the fact is that, you know, if you think you're typically looking for 3s and 4 pluses, if you look at this, it does even itself out for you in the end. And obviously this is not particularly statistically significant, it being only 600 rolls, but it's sort of borne my theory out that the smaller dice seem to give me better results, and that's what I thought was the case, and that appears to have been borne true by this small experiment. So there you go, my suspicions were perhaps correct. I thought that the larger dice would actually score worse than what you would typically expect, and that worked out to be true. And I thought that my smaller dice that I've often considered to be lucky, were actually genuinely lucky. And statistically, it does appear that that is the case. I mean, scoring 120 sixes and 600 rolls is, you know, statistically a little bit on the anomalous side, to be perfectly honest. Being sort of, you know, 5, 10 out and things like that, then you might expect that. But being that far out would suggest that, you know, they are quote-unquote lucky dice. But then if you look at the overall number, total score, it's only a little bit better than the average score than you would expect. It's, you know, maybe 3% better. But if we look at like the larger dice, then basically the larger dice are, you know, statistically, you know, 4 or 5% worse than what you would typically expect. So I think that my theory that not letting the dice roll because they're larger is definitely bearing true, actually, because the dice aren't rolling, they're just falling and landing flat. Anyway, I thought I'd share with you that piece of interesting and completely, non-mathematical assessment. And maybe, just maybe, it's not the dice, it's the way you roll them. But maybe it's the dice. Hope you found that interesting. If you did, like, subscribe. I will be doing more. See you next time.